what I'm about to tell you is definitely the secret to getting things done. I know because I have used this little trick myself many times. And I am actually right now using this strategy, trick, technique to finish up a project that I have been working on almost a year. Well, in reality, going on 2.5 years. What is this trick? Well, stay tuned and I will unwrap it and reveal it to you. Hi, I'm Dr. B, the Creativity Sensei, and I am here to guide you, train you, teach you how to ramp up your creativity, boost your confidence, and find utter joy in the work that you're doing. What is this trick that I mentioned earlier? Well, it's all about performance. Today's video is part 3 in a series on the pillars of creativity. Part 1, I talked about motivation. Part 2, I tackled the topic of modification. And today, in part 3, I'm going to share my thoughts on manifestation. Manifesting your work, bringing it into existence, making it real. What I discovered many years ago was through my association with an organization that puts on concerts. So the little backstory, I started taking bass clarinet lessons when I was 40 years old. This was the first time in my life that I had private music lessons. I started at the end of January in 1999. I worked and learned and discovered a few things. My teacher was very patient with me. First of all, he told me that I was holding my bass clarinet incorrectly. I had always been taught to have it to the right of my knees, and he corrected me and said, it's a better airflow if you have the horn between your knees with the bell resting on its peg about 8 inches off the floor. And this one little change improved the force and the wind behind my blowing. He instructed me through other things. And after a couple months, he came into my lesson one day and said, I think you should do a recital. I felt the grip of anxiety in my gut. That is where it lived. That probably also radiated out of my throat, into my shoulders, into my armpits, sweaty on the palm of my hands. And my immediate reaction was, no thank you. My kids had been taking music lessons. My daughter had taken violin, piano, flute. My son was currently taking bassoon lessons. Anybody who has taken music lessons, especially as a young person, has probably been invited to do a recital, or maybe to play with their band or orchestra. Once you have the date set, then everything, every practice, every rehearsal, every lesson works toward getting better so that when you get on stage, you're ready. I finally agreed after he cajoled and convinced me, and he gave me a piece of music to start working on, and together we got started. I would devote my practice time at home to working through some key parts. In each one of our lessons, he would go over a few more measures, talk about phrasing, and the work continued. The recital was probably at the end of May, maybe early June. Lessons would continue until that point. Near the end of the semester, he introduced me to my accompanist, who would play the piano while I played my solo part on bass clarinet. I gave my little recital. When a person is feeling this type of tension, something happens to your other senses in a way you cannot see. You can't hear. Your brain switches to flight, fight, or freeze. And I think it was definitely a combination of flight and freeze when he suggested this concert series. Definitely, I was not going to fight. At the top of the pyramid that I mentioned in parts 1 and 2, the bottom layer being motivation, the next layer up being modification, and the top 3 blocks of this pyramid are manifestation. The ultimate apex is performance, but below that are the 2 blocks of promote and practice. You might think that you should practice first, but without having this realization of the actual date, the program, the location, and a group of invited guests that learn about your performance through promotion, well, the practice can become just practice. If you have ever tried to learn to play the guitar, perhaps on your own, you'll fiddle around with it and play around and learn some chords and figure out how to finger some notes. You'll practice, get better at rhythm, chord changes, various things like that. But until your friend invites you to their party and says, "Hey, yeah, I hear you've been learning to play the guitar. You should bring it along. Maybe we'll do some singing." That's when everything switches. That's when your ideas crystallize, when they zoom into focus, when those little particles that have been flitting around you suddenly come together. Think of a drone performance, those little lights in the air. We don't know what the image is until all of a sudden they form together and you can see whatever the designer had in mind. They flickered, they dance, they rotate and bob. Suddenly you can see planets, or you can see faces of famous people. You can see figures dancing. That is what happens when you promote your performance. You have purpose. Your practices are no longer just for fun or putting in the time, or so that you can say, yes, I did my 30 minutes today. Trust me, this is key. This is the element, manifestation, that brings everything together. And so, at the end of my little bass clarinet recital, where I had those moments of freeze, couldn't really absorb what was going on. If anybody clapped or cheered at the end, I don't think I heard it. I was prompted to stand up and take a bow. I felt like I didn't really deserve it, but I did it anyway. As I was walking out of the recital hall, having swabbed out my bass clarinet and put it back into its case and had the music in my hand, my teacher said to me, "It didn't suck." And you know what? It didn't. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't awful either. It was one of the pivotal moments in my life. So, part 3 for you, set a performance date. You might be wondering, well, how can I do that if I make pots, or I'm a woodworker, or I'm a gardener? There is a way. And I think I'm going to leave that for a part 4. Surprise, bonus. Please consider subscribing to my channel, Dr. B, the Creativity Sensei. Please like this and share it if I have helped you in any way. And please leave a comment below. Ask me some questions. I have a few years of experience, and I'd be happy to answer. Thank you so much. A biento.